In the shadowed corridors of occupied France, amidst the antiseptic smell of hospitals and the relentless rhythm of wartime medicine, a young nurse quietly wove a web of deception that would baffle the Nazi regime for years. Her name was Marthe Cohn, a Jewish nurse from Metz, Alsace, who would become one of the most daring operatives of the French resistance. What made her story remarkable was not just her courage, but her ability to turn the very tools of her profession into instruments of espionage. Born in 1920, Martha grew up acutely aware of the rising threat of Nazism. Her family, steeped in the traditions of Jewish Alsace, lived under the shadow of fear as Hitler's influence spread across Europe. By the time the German forces marched into France in 1940, Martha was 20 years old, young, educated, and fiercely determined to resist oppression. Unlike many who fled or went into hiding, she chose a path fraught with danger, direct engagement with the enemy under the guise of a nurse. By 1943, Martha had joined the French resistance. She was initially tasked with helping wounded civilians and Allied soldiers in secret, transporting messages, and providing medical aid in clandestine operations. Her medical training gave her a cover that few could question. She could move relatively freely across towns and checkpoints, her white nurse's uniform a symbol of neutrality that the occupying forces hesitated to challenge. But Martha's bravery went beyond tending the wounded. She began collecting critical intelligence about German troop movements, supply lines, and fortifications. Each patient she treated could potentially reveal the positions and plans of enemy units. Through careful observation and subtle questioning, she gathered information that would later be transmitted to the resistance, often at great personal risk. Her intelligence missions required meticulous planning. She memorized the schedules of German officers, identified the routes frequently traveled by soldiers, and learned the routines of the hospitals themselves. Every scrap of knowledge became a potential tool against the Nazis. Even small details, like the type of medical supplies being requisitioned, could indicate broader strategic movements. Martha's ability to blend into the environment, to appear as a devoted caregiver while secretly undermining the enemy, was crucial to her survival. Unlike conventional spies, she relied not on weapons, but on observation, subtlety, and courage, demonstrating that one person's intellect and bravery could shift the balance in a brutal, mechanized war. By the end of 1943, she had earned a reputation within the resistance as a reliable and fearless operative. But Martha's most daring missions were yet to come. Missions that would require her to cross enemy lines, assume false identities, and confront the horrors of war directly. It was in these dangerous undertakings that her unique combination of medical skill, intelligence, and courage would truly shine, establishing her as one of the war's unsung heroes. Marthe Cohn quickly realized that her position as a nurse offered her more than just a chance to save lives. It provided the perfect disguise for espionage. In the eyes of the German occupiers, a nurse was neutral, compassionate, and unthreatening. They had no reason to suspect that the woman tending to their wounded could be secretly collecting intelligence to destroy their operations. Martha understood the power of appearances and used it to her advantage with meticulous precision. Her first tasks involved routine medical work in small hospitals near the front lines. While caring for soldiers and civilians alike, she began to subtly probe for information. Questions were phrased innocuously. Where did your unit come from? Or how many men are stationed nearby? A soldier, fatigued and in pain, often let slip crucial details without realizing it. Each piece of information was carefully memorized, forming a mental map of troop placements, supply routes, and operational plans. Martha's intelligence gathering extended beyond mere conversation. She studied the medical charts of soldiers, noting the frequency and types of injuries. These details allowed her to infer the movements of German forces and the intensity of various battles. For example, a sudden influx of soldiers wounded by artillery in a particular region indicated imminent or ongoing offensives. Martha documented these observations in her mind, often repeating the details silently to ensure accuracy before relaying them to the resistance. Her courage was constantly tested. There were times when German officers visited the hospitals for inspections, scrutinizing both patients and staff. Martha maintained her calm, wearing her white uniform as both armor and mask. Any hint of nervousness could have been fatal. She mastered the art of blending empathy with subtle intelligence gathering, smiling at wounded soldiers, offering comfort, all while her mind worked to extract vital information without drawing attention. Martha also relied on her understanding of human psychology. She recognized that flattery, charm, and feigned sympathy could lower the guard of even the most disciplined soldiers. By treating them with kindness, she gained their trust, and in many cases, soldiers voluntarily shared sensitive details about troop morale, command changes, and logistical operations. Even in the darkest hours, Martha's ingenuity was apparent. She devised small, secretive methods for recording or memorizing critical information. While some agents relied on written notes that could be discovered, Martha committed nearly everything to memory, a skill that required intense focus and discipline. This approach minimized the risk of exposure and ensured that she could continue her missions undetected. By the end of 1943, her dual role as healer and spy had become second nature. Martha's medical knowledge shielded her, her courage propelled her, and her intelligence made her indispensable to the resistance. Yet, the challenges ahead would push her beyond observation into direct action, requiring her to cross enemy lines and operate entirely under false pretenses, a test that would define her extraordinary role in the war. By early 1944, Marthe Cohn's role in the French resistance had evolved from intelligence gathering within hospitals to daring missions behind enemy lines. The stakes had risen dramatically. The Allied forces were planning major operations, and accurate, timely information was more valuable than ever. Martha knew that delivering this intelligence could save countless lives, but it would also put her directly in the path of Nazi detection. Martha's first assignment beyond the safety of hospital walls involved traveling across German-occupied territories in Lorraine, her native region. She had to assume a new identity, blending seamlessly into towns patrolled by enemy soldiers. To do so, she adopted the persona of a German nurse, complete with forged identification papers, fluency in German, and the confidence to move without hesitation through checkpoints. Her deep understanding of German culture and language, developed from childhood, was critical in sustaining this disguise. The risks were immense. If stopped and questioned, Martha faced the likelihood of immediate execution. Yet, she relied on her composure, medical authority, and quick thinking. Her training as a nurse was invaluable. Not only did it provide a plausible reason for her travels, but it also allowed her to interact with soldiers naturally, examining injuries or discussing treatments as though her primary purpose was entirely humanitarian. Martha's missions required careful planning. She memorized travel routes, calculated the timing of German patrols, and observed the daily routines of towns. She carried nothing incriminating on her person. Intelligence had to be committed entirely to memory. Even small errors could prove fatal. The cognitive load was immense, yet she remained remarkably composed, demonstrating a level of mental discipline that few could match. During these missions, Martha witnessed the human consequences of the war firsthand. She encountered wounded German soldiers, civilians struggling under harsh occupation, and the constant presence of fear in every street. Despite this, she never wavered in her objective. Each piece of information she gathered, troop movements, locations of armaments, or strategic plans, was meticulously noted in her mind, ready to be transmitted to resistance leaders upon her safe return. Her courage was tested multiple times. On several occasions, she narrowly avoided detection when random patrols demanded identification. In one instance, a German officer became suspicious of her papers and questioned her at length. Martha's nerves held steady. She engaged in conversation fluently, referencing medical protocols and German hospital procedures with such precision that the officer was convinced of her authenticity and allowed her passage. These moments highlighted not only her bravery, but also her quick thinking under pressure. Martha's successful crossing of enemy lines became a blueprint for future missions. Her methods, memorization of intelligence, use of medical disguise, and psychological manipulation, demonstrated a unique combination of skill, courage, and ingenuity. Each successful mission strengthened the resistance, saving lives and advancing the Allied cause. Yet the most dangerous operations were still ahead, requiring her to push the limits of disguise, subterfuge, and personal courage in the heart of enemy territory. Marthe Cohn's effectiveness as a spy relied not only on her medical skills, but also on her mastery of deception. In the world of occupied France, appearances could be a weapon, and Marthe wielded her disguise with precision. Her ability to convince Nazi officers that she was a loyal German nurse allowed her to move freely through territories where most civilians feared to tread. Marthe's training and intelligence had prepared her for such high-stakes encounters, but nothing could entirely mitigate the psychological pressure of being constantly observed by armed soldiers. Every interaction, every glance, could betray her. She had to maintain a perfect balance of confidence and plausibility, projecting calm authority while scanning for danger. Her ability to adopt the persona of a competent, indifferent nurse allowed her to blend into her surroundings effortlessly. One of the key tools in her arsenal was understanding human behavior. Marthe knew that fear, fatigue, and arrogance could all be leveraged. Soldiers tired from long shifts or injured in battle were often eager to speak to someone who seemed sympathetic. By offering care and attention, she lowered their defenses, allowing critical information to slip during casual conversation. At the same time, she carefully avoided asking direct questions that might arouse suspicion, framing inquiries as routine medical queries or idle chit-chat. Her medical knowledge further enhanced her credibility. She could discuss symptoms, treatments, and hospital protocols in detail, impressing German officers and personnel alike. Her competence made her appear indispensable, a figure whose assistance could not easily be dismissed. This perception of authority allowed her to access restricted areas and gain insights that would have been impossible for a typical civilian. Marthe also employed physical props to support her deception. Her uniform, medical instruments, and patient charts all contributed to an aura of authenticity. She carefully adjusted her demeanor to match her surroundings, efficient and professional in hospitals, compassionate and approachable in civilian settings. Each subtle detail reinforced her cover, making it increasingly difficult for anyone to suspect her true purpose. Despite these precautions, danger was omnipresent. Marthe faced several situations where her life hung by a thread. Once, a high-ranking German officer questioned her extensively about her background and the patients under her care. Her heart raced as she improvised answers, weaving a story consistent with her assumed identity. By the end of the interrogation, the officer was satisfied, unaware that Marthe had memorized and conveyed critical intelligence to the resistance mere hours before. Marthe's success demonstrated that intelligence work was not solely about weapons or brute force. It was a battle of minds, of subtlety and cunning. Her ability to deceive, combined with courage and discipline, made her one of the most effective operatives in occupied France. Through her actions, she proved that even a single individual, armed with intellect and nerve, could outsmart an entire military apparatus. As 1944 progressed, Marthe's missions became increasingly ambitious. Crossing enemy lines, infiltrating military hospitals, and gathering sensitive information placed her directly in the path of extreme danger. Yet her commitment never wavered. Every risk she took, every secret she collected, brought the Allies closer to victory and marked her as a heroine whose story would endure long after the war. By mid-1944, Marthe Cohn had fully embraced her role as an operative behind enemy lines. Each mission demanded meticulous preparation, courage, and unwavering focus. Crossing into German-controlled territories was no longer a rare occurrence. It had become her daily reality. These operations were not only dangerous, they were often a matter of life and death. Marthe's journeys took her deep into areas patrolled by German soldiers and occupied by strict surveillance. To avoid detection, she relied on her forged identification papers, fluency in German, and her natural familiarity with local customs. But even the most convincing documents and flawless language skills were not enough. Marthe had to embody her role convincingly at all times. Every gesture, every word, every decision had to reinforce her cover as a loyal nurse. Her missions were carefully choreographed. She memorized troop movements, hospital schedules, and the locations of German supply depots. Marthe carried no written notes. Everything was committed to memory, reducing the risk of capture and execution. Each mission required immense mental discipline. Forgetting a single detail could compromise her cover and cost lives. Martha's medical role proved invaluable. Hospitals and aid stations were hubs of activity, providing her access to officers, wounded soldiers, and sensitive documents. By tending to the sick and injured, she gained the trust of those around her. Soldiers were often forthcoming, believing her concern genuine. Through subtle questioning and keen observation, Martha extracted critical intelligence about troop deployments, ammunition shipments, and operational plans. During these missions, Martha also encountered the human consequences of war. She saw the fear, suffering, and exhaustion etched on the faces of soldiers and civilians alike. While her focus was on intelligence gathering, these encounters reinforced her determination. Each secret she learned and transmitted to the resistance could save lives and weaken the Nazi war machine. One of Martha's most daring operations involved infiltrating a hospital treating high-ranking German officers. Disguised as a German nurse, she moved among the wounded, carefully observing conversations and memorizing troop information. She even found opportunities to photograph documents when possible, a dangerous task that required both precision and nerve. Any mistake could have resulted in immediate execution. Despite the constant danger, Martha remained undeterred. Her courage, intelligence, and discipline allowed her to operate successfully behind enemy lines for months. Each mission strengthened her resolve and her reputation within the resistance. She became known not only for her bravery, but also for her ability to remain calm under extreme pressure, a quality that would define her legacy. Martha's work behind enemy lines exemplified the power of individual action in a war defined by massive armies and industrial might. Her skillful deception, medical expertise, and relentless courage allowed her to gather intelligence that was vital to the Allied war effort. Through her actions, she demonstrated that even in the darkest hours, one determined individual could make a profound impact on the course of history. Operating as a spy behind enemy lines placed an enormous mental and emotional burden on Marthe Cohn. Each piece of intelligence she collected, each conversation she navigated, carried the weight of life and death, not only for herself but for countless others. The responsibility was immense, yet Martha understood that every risk she took was a step toward liberation and justice. Martha's primary challenge was maintaining absolute secrecy. In occupied territories, even a single slip of the tongue could reveal her true identity and compromise entire operations. She memorized every detail meticulously: the number of troops in a unit, the location of weapons depots, supply routes, and the schedules of patrols. No written records were allowed. Everything had to be committed to memory. This mental discipline became her shield, protecting both herself and the resistance network she served. The psychological strain was relentless. Martha could not reveal her thoughts or fears, even to allies. Trust had to be carefully calibrated. While some members of the resistance were aware of her missions, few knew the full extent of the intelligence she carried. Isolation was a constant companion, but Martha learned to transform this solitude into focus, using it to sharpen her observational skills and strengthen her resolve. Martha also grappled with the moral complexities of her work, treating wounded soldiers, some of whom were her enemies, while simultaneously gathering information that could lead to their defeat required a steady mind. She reconciled these contradictions by focusing on the broader objective, the liberation of her homeland and the defeat of the Nazi regime. Every patient she treated, every secret she memorized, was a contribution to a greater cause. Her methods of intelligence gathering were often subtle. Martha would ask casual questions under the guise of medical curiosity, observe the movement of soldiers within hospital corridors, and even take note of the supplies requisitioned for specific operations. Each seemingly trivial detail could reveal critical patterns about enemy strategy. Over time, she compiled a comprehensive mental map of the German forces in the regions she operated within. Martha's resilience was also tested by the ever-present threat of betrayal. Collaborators, informants, and suspicious officers could appear at any moment. She learned to read human behavior with precision, detecting micro-expressions and shifts in tone that signaled suspicion. This keen perception allowed her to avoid dangerous encounters and maintain her cover, even in tense situations. Despite the constant danger, Martha's determination never faltered. She understood that her work was pivotal to the success of the resistance and, ultimately, the Allied war effort. The burden of secrets, though heavy, became a source of strength, fueling her resolve to continue her missions. Her courage under pressure exemplified the extraordinary role that a single individual could play in a conflict of unprecedented scale. Through discipline, intelligence, and unwavering moral clarity, Marthe Cohn transformed the ordinary skills of a nurse into extraordinary instruments of resistance. The weight of the secrets she carried was immense, but each one brought her closer to the ultimate goal, the liberation of her people and the downfall of the Nazi regime. Her story would become a testament to the power of courage, ingenuity, and steadfast dedication in the face of unimaginable adversity. Marthe Cohn's missions behind enemy lines were fraught with danger, and there were numerous occasions when her life hung by a thread. Her success depended not only on skill and intelligence, but also on luck, quick thinking, and the ability to remain calm under intense pressure. Each narrow escape reinforced her resilience and her reputation as one of the most daring operatives of the French resistance. One of the most harrowing incidents occurred during a trip to a German hospital located near a major transport hub. Marthe was carrying critical intelligence about troop deployments, information that could alter the course of an upcoming Allied operation. While passing through a checkpoint, she was stopped by a Gestapo officer known for his meticulous scrutiny of identification papers. Her heart raced, but her expression remained composed. She presented her forged documents, explained her purpose as a nurse, and engaged in conversation to deflect suspicion. The officer's gaze lingered on her face and uniform, but she maintained eye contact, answered questions confidently, and projected an aura of authority that convinced him to let her pass. Moments later, once she was safely beyond the checkpoint, Marthe allowed herself a deep, silent breath of relief. On another occasion, Marthe found herself in a hospital where a new officer had arrived unexpectedly. Unaware of her identity, he scrutinized her activities and questioned her about her presence. Marthe relied on her medical expertise and knowledge of German protocols, speaking fluently and confidently. She even offered to assist in treating injured soldiers, demonstrating competence that left no room for doubt about her legitimacy. By the end of the encounter, the officer was convinced she was a loyal nurse, entirely unaware that she had memorized critical intelligence and intended to relay it to the resistance. These experiences required exceptional psychological acuity. Marthe had to read subtle cues in body language and tone, recognizing potential threats before they could escalate. She learned to anticipate the questions officers might ask, crafting plausible answers on the spot. Her ability to maintain composure under interrogation was a critical skill that ensured her survival and the success of her missions. Despite these narrow escapes, Marthe never allowed fear to paralyze her. She understood that the very risks she faced were inseparable from the importance of her work. Every successful operation, every piece of intelligence she delivered, contributed to the larger objective of undermining Nazi control and aiding Allied forces. Her courage under fire became a defining aspect of her character, demonstrating that bravery often manifests not in moments of physical confrontation, but in quiet, calculated acts of mental fortitude. Marthe's narrow escapes also illustrate the delicate balance between skill and chance in espionage. While her training, intelligence, and composure were essential, fortune often played a role. The unpredictability of war meant that even the most carefully planned missions could encounter unexpected obstacles. Yet, through a combination of preparation and adaptability, Marthe consistently navigated these perils successfully, proving that her ingenuity and courage were as formidable as any weapon in the resistance arsenal. As 1944 progressed and Allied operations intensified, the stakes became higher and Marthe's missions more dangerous. Yet she continued to operate with unwavering commitment, each narrow escape reinforcing her resolve and shaping her into one of the most remarkable and effective operatives of the French resistance. By late 1944, Marthe Cohn had become a highly trusted operative within the French resistance, and her assignments grew increasingly complex. No longer was she merely observing and memorizing troop movements. She was now tasked with gathering critical intelligence that could directly impact the outcomes of major Allied operations. Her work required a combination of keen observation, medical expertise, and unwavering courage. Martha's primary focus during this period was German troop deployments in eastern France and the border regions near Germany. Her intimate knowledge of the terrain, combined with her fluent German and medical credentials, allowed her to move with relative freedom. Soldiers, officers, and hospital staff viewed her as a dedicated nurse, completely oblivious to the fact that she was systematically collecting highly sensitive information. One method she employed was the careful observation of patient records. By noting the injuries and treatment patterns of wounded soldiers, she could infer which units were active, what types of weapons they were using, and the likely locations of upcoming operations. For instance, a sudden influx of soldiers with shrapnel wounds indicated heavy artillery action in a nearby region, revealing the intensity and location of ongoing battles. Every detail, however minor it seemed, became a valuable piece of the intelligence puzzle. Martha also relied on social engineering to acquire information. She developed rapport with German medical staff and even some soldiers, using subtle flattery, empathy, and feigned curiosity to encourage them to speak freely. Casual conversations often yielded critical details about supply lines, troop reinforcements, and strategic plans. Her ability to read people, combined with her ability to blend into her surroundings, made her exceptionally effective in eliciting information without raising suspicion. In addition, Martha occasionally carried small, secret tools of espionage. Though her work was primarily mental and observational, she occasionally needed to transport written notes or photographs. These were hidden within medical equipment or personal items, carefully concealed to avoid detection. The risks associated with carrying such materials were enormous, but the potential rewards, the strategic advantage they provided to Allied forces, were worth the danger. Communication with the resistance was another critical aspect of her missions. Once she gathered intelligence, she needed to deliver it safely without alerting German authorities. This often involved complex routes, secret drop points, and trusted intermediaries. Martha's ability to memorize intricate details of troop positions, coupled with her physical courage to traverse hostile territory, ensured that vital information reached those who could act upon it. Martha's work during this period exemplified the role of intelligence in modern warfare. While battles were fought with tanks, planes, and artillery, the information she collected could determine the success or failure of entire operations. Her meticulous observation, psychological insight, and bravery allowed the resistance to anticipate German movements and coordinate effectively with Allied forces, saving countless lives in the process. Through her dedication, Marthe Cohn demonstrated that intelligence was not only about strategy, but also about courage, adaptability, and resourcefulness. Her ability to gather critical intelligence while maintaining the appearance of a simple nurse was a testament to her extraordinary skill and determination, solidifying her place as one of the most remarkable operatives of World War II. As the Allies advanced further into German-occupied territories in late 1944, the dangers surrounding Marthe Cohn's missions increased exponentially. The Nazi regime, aware of the growing resistance activity, tightened security and implemented stricter controls. Every checkpoint, every patrol, and every encounter with German officers became a potential threat not only to Marthe, but to the success of her operations and the safety of the resistance network as a whole. Marthe's daily reality was a constant negotiation with risk. She had to maintain her composure at all times, even when faced with sudden inspections or unexpected questioning. Her ability to remain calm under pressure, honed over years of careful observation and meticulous planning, was vital. One slip, one hesitation, could expose her true identity and have catastrophic consequences. The nature of the intelligence Marthe collected had also become more sensitive. She was now privy to information about German plans for troop reinforcements, military logistics, and strategic defensive positions. Each detail could alter the outcome of critical Allied operations. The stakes could not have been higher, and Marthe understood that failure was not an option. Her courage and judgment were tested daily as she navigated hostile territory while carrying potentially lethal knowledge in her mind. On several occasions, Marthe narrowly avoided capture. In one instance, she was stopped at a checkpoint by an officer who had received orders to scrutinize anyone traveling without prior authorization. Marthe's forged documents were examined thoroughly, and she was subjected to an intense interrogation. Drawing upon her extensive knowledge of German medical procedures, combined with calm confidence and quick thinking, she was able to convince the officer that she was a loyal nurse on official duty. Moments like these underscored the razor-thin line between success and death. The psychological strain of such encounters was immense. Martha had to maintain not only her false identity, but also the facade of normalcy, all while mentally cataloging vital intelligence. Her memory was her most critical weapon, as any written record could lead to immediate arrest. She relied on mnemonic techniques and repeated mental rehearsals to ensure that every piece of information remained accurate and accessible when it reached the resistance. Martha's work also required constant adaptability. German policies changed rapidly, checkpoints shifted, and random inspections became more common. She learned to anticipate new threats and modify her strategies accordingly, adjusting her routes, timing, and interactions to minimize risk. This combination of foresight and flexibility allowed her to continue her missions despite escalating dangers. Despite the intensifying risks, Martha remained unwavering. Each successful mission, each piece of intelligence delivered, reinforced the vital role she played in undermining the Nazi war effort. Her courage, intellect, and relentless determination exemplified the extraordinary contributions of ordinary individuals in wartime. By the end of 1944, Marthe Cohn had established herself not only as a skilled operative, but also as a symbol of bravery, ingenuity, and resilience in the face of overwhelming danger. By the end of World War II, Marthe Cohn had accomplished what few could imagine. She had operated behind enemy lines for years, gathering critical intelligence, deceiving German officers, and contributing significantly to the Allied war effort, all while maintaining the guise of a humble nurse. Her story is a testament to the power of courage, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to justice. Martha's work saved countless lives. The intelligence she gathered enabled the resistance and Allied forces to anticipate German movements, disrupt supply lines, and protect vulnerable civilians. Her meticulous observations and mental acuity allowed her to relay precise information without ever leaving a written trail, reducing the risk of exposure. In doing so, she proved that one determined individual could have a profound impact even amid the chaos of total war. After the liberation of France, Martha's contributions began to receive recognition. She remained modest about her exploits, understanding that the true value of her work lay not in accolades, but in the lives it saved. Nevertheless, historians and fellow resistance members later acknowledged her extraordinary bravery and skill. She became a symbol of what resilience, ingenuity, and moral courage could achieve, even in the darkest times. Martha's methods offer lessons that extend beyond the battlefield. Her ability to blend observation, empathy, and strategic thinking demonstrates the importance of intellect and adaptability in the face of danger. She understood human behavior, exploited opportunities carefully, and maintained discipline under extreme pressure. These qualities allowed her to navigate life-threatening situations with remarkable success, and they remain a model of practical intelligence and courage. Her story also highlights the often overlooked role of women in wartime. While traditional narratives focus on soldiers and generals, Martha's experience shows how women leveraged unique positions and skills to influence the course of history. By using her medical profession as a cover, she turned everyday knowledge and compassion into powerful tools of resistance. Her courage challenges stereotypes and underscores the essential contributions of women in critical historical moments. In the years following the war, Martha dedicated herself to sharing her experiences. Through interviews, lectures, and her memoir, she documented the realities of life under occupation, the intricacies of espionage, and the moral complexities of wartime decisions. Her accounts have inspired countless people, illustrating that heroism is not always about combat, but often about intelligence, resourcefulness, and the willingness to act when the stakes are highest. Marthe Cohn's legacy endures as a symbol of bravery, intellect, and moral fortitude. Her actions remind us that even in times of overwhelming adversity, a single person, armed with courage and ingenuity, can change the course of events. Her life stands as a testament to the extraordinary impact of ordinary individuals who choose to resist oppression and fight for justice, leaving a mark that history will not forget.